Hey, how's it going? It's finally time for part 3 of my How to Film Hunts video series. I anticipate that this might be a bit tougher of a challenge than my last two videos for the simple reason that most of you are at slightly different levels of knowledge when it comes to video editing. I am going to start off with technical specs. Here's what we got for Adobe. This is straight off their website. This is what they recommend for system requirements, and you're going to find similar requirements for other high-level softwares. So you can just hit pause here and go over this a little bit more thoroughly. I've got clips from last fall's bear hunt. I've got these clips up here on the left are all from my Canon Vixia. This is the main camera that I used during the hunt. And then these clips on the right here in this video 2 channel are from my Sony NEX5R, which is a mirrorless camera. So you're going to notice all these shots are going to have a lot higher depth of field because they were filmed with a 50mm lens at f1.4. So usually the best thing to do here is to go through each clip and start off just by trimming everything that you don't want to have in each clip. So starting off with this first clip here, I'll just watch through it and I'll see where I want to start the clip, I'll see where I want to end the clip. If there's a shaky spot I want to cut out, I'll do that now. Okay, so now this looks like it's basically, I was just going to do a pan. Real basic, establishing type of shot. So that's where I want it to end, right here. And in Premiere, I've got a shortcut for C to cut the clip. And I'm going to cut it there. Press V to get back to the cursor tool. And I can cut off each side of that clip by hitting delete. And now I'm just left with, actually I want to start right here. So I'll zoom in with the equal sign. And I can just actually drag and snap to that point right there. Now I have just what I want in that clip. Because these clips are all in correct chronological order, I can just go through each of these clips and see what I want, cut them down to size. So now this clip, obviously, it's way too long as is. I'm just going to make that like a 2-second clip, and I can just cut that in wherever I want. And what do we have here? Another establishing shot. Cut it in there. Out there. And you can see how I'm very quickly weeding through this footage and turning a lot of footage into a little footage very fast, which is the whole point. Now this could get a little bit boring, just watch me go through all these clips. I'm just going to fast forward here while I go through and trim the rest of these clips. Okay, so now I've just went and trimmed all those clips, both the Canon clips and the Sony clips, and I took what was a ton of, maybe 15 minutes at least of video, and I have shrunken it down to roughly 5 minutes. So one thing you need to take away from this is when you're out in the woods, always film a lot more than you think you're going to use, because you will cut out the junky stuff in editing. So now I've essentially got a couple B-roll shots with the Canon, and then I've got a whole bunch of B-roll shots with the Sony over here, and then the actual action of the hunt. We got a deer coming through before the bear, but the actual action of the hunt is all going to be captured in this segment right here. And then what I'm going to plan on doing is taking these B-roll shots and then just slipping them in, where they're needed. So if you look at these B-roll shots right now, again, before the hunt, actually no, this is after the hunt, so okay. From this point onward, this segment of B-roll is all after Joe's already shot the bear. And this is all reenactment, which is, important to understand, because if you're watching hunting shows on TV, they do this all the time, and sometimes you don't even realize it. But essentially, what's going to happen is when you're in the tree here, you just go over everything that just happened as close as you possibly can. I don't like doing post-shot interviews afterwards because I don't think that they're nearly as good as they are live. But as far as this type of stuff, acting like you're drawing the bow back, acting like you're, watching the animal run off, that kind of stuff you can capture after the fact and then plug it back in. Because there's no way I could have filmed both the bear and Joe at the same time. So this stage after the trimming phase is just the rearranging phase. I'm just taking B-roll shots and I'm inserting them in to the rest of the clip. I'm going to select all these clips from the Canon. I'm just going to drag everything to the right, because I'm going to take a couple of these B-roll shots and just put them back to back to back at the intro. I'm just going to get rid of that audio right now. So the video tracks are on top, the audio tracks are on the bottom. They're linked by number, if you haven't noticed that so far. I can zoom in here. And with Premiere Pro, I can just hit on link, click on the audio, hit delete, and I'm going to do that with all of my DSLR clips pretty much, because the audio is not that great anyway, and we're just going to put music over it. Okay, so now what you have here is a much better representation of what the final thing is going to look like. Start off with just a couple of B-roll shots, and this is all just kind of establishing the scene. I'm going to throw in some music and then time the music, or sync the music with the clips so that it sounds like the music is actually supposed to be there. Then we get into the hunt. Everything just kind of flows logically and chronologically. Again, a couple establishing shots, which are always nice to throw into your clips before you have any action. And if you get any footage of, other animals, squirrels, deer, etc., that's always nice to throw in there. And actually, I have these two clips switched. It should be like here, because right here, I have the B-roll shot. I'm keeping these separate for you guys. Everything up on the second line is all of my B-roll shots. So this is something we filmed afterwards, and I inserted it right here, where I basically film myself telling Joe that there's a bear coming, and then it cuts back to the original footage of the bear actually coming in. And then we got more footage of the bear as he's coming in. Sits down with the bait, and then we go B-roll shot of Joe drawing back. Footage of the bear going down. And then we got Joe's post-hunt interview, which is taken immediately after the shot. This is as live as it gets. And then in the actual fully edited version of this, I just got rid of this section right here because the lighting's really bad. The audio wasn't that great, so I just got rid of it and put a picture. Any video editing software should be able to do that. And if it can't, then get something else. So now you have kind of two options as to what you want to do next. Now that you have all the clips in place, you can either work on the audio or you can work on the color correction. They're the two main things that still need to be done here. I am going to start with the audio. So I'm just going to take, yeah, this one's a little bit better. So any of the Dano and Dano songs, Kevin MacLeod, these guys have music that you can download for free and use their music in your videos. The only thing they ask you to do is that you provide attribution somewhere in the video or in the description. So I'm just going to take this song and I'm going to plug it in to my audio track beneath this B-roll. Okay, so now what I'm going to want to do here is time up the video so that it matches the beat of the music. So I'm going to zoom in here by pressing equals. And I'm just going to count the beats on this music. Okay, so right there is the next beat. Can you hear that? So that's where I want my clip to stop. And if you zoom in, sometimes you can actually see just by the height of the waveform where that beat is going to be. It's going to be a bigger amplitude on the wave. So let's see how that lines up. Looks pretty close. Let's drag this next clip in and watch. Okay, so that one's pretty close. I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm checking. Alright. So now, let's look at this whole intro here. Okay, I like that. That's pretty good. The other thing I'm going to do to that is I'm going to fade out this audio as it goes into the main footage of the hunt. So I'm going to go into effects, and if I type in fade, we got an exponential fade. That'll work. Just about any software should have a fade for audio of some type or another. And that just fades the audio out. You can bring the rest of the clips in, and I think I'm going to get rid of this one. Okay, so now you can just see that it's a nice transition between the intro and the actual hunt. And I actually think I want to apply an audio fade to the beginning of this clip too. That first clip. Just to get the noise of the woods kind of gradually coming in. And if you have problems with the audio, like your person's voice isn't that great, you can a lot of times boost that up by applying an audio gain. And sometimes you're going to find that in the effects. In this case, I don't think they have one, but you can go right down to the clip, and then you have these little audio meters, and you can give them a +6 boost, or all the way up to, pretty much 0. Or instead of using that slider, I can actually right click on it, click on audio gain, and then I can plug in adjust gain by blank decibels. That's how you bring it up or down. And that's the simplest way to do it. You can bring it into software that's designed for audio, like Adobe Audition, and that will allow you to do a lot more complicated things like noise reduction, EQ, that type of thing. But that's a little bit more advanced than I want to get into for this video. So now the audio is done. We have color correction left to do, and then there was one more thing, it's just transitions, video transitions I'm going to go through right now. There's only really 3 types of transitions that I'll ever use. They are dip to black, dip to white, and cross dissolve. So a dip to black, a lot of times I'll use the beginning or the end of a scene. So if you can see, I just applied that dip to black effect right here on the very first clip, and now it starts at black and fades in. So at the very end again, I'll add a dip to black, and I'll fade out the audio too, because I didn't do that yet. So now everything just kind of fades out nicely. A dip to white, I will use, oftentimes, I like to use it on a quicker transition between clips. So I could do that with these clips pretty easily. I'll just take my dip to white, and I like to make it shorter than the default. See how it just kind of makes a flash between clips? And it works especially nice when you got bright scenes like this. Okay, and then the last type of effect that you're going to have is cross dissolve. I'll bring that up, apply it across 2 clips, and then to show you what the effect looks like, I'll just leave it at full length. See how the clips just nicely dissolve into one another, as opposed to just being a straight cut like that. That's what cross dissolve is going to do. It just gives you a more smooth transition. And I'll use either or. Sometimes I'll just do a straight cut and I won't even worry about the cross dissolve. It's kind of a matter of personal preference to a point. So now we just got color correction. And color correction is one of those things where in a cheaper software you're going to be really limited. In a more expensive software you're going to have a lot more options. Like in Adobe here, what I can do is actually bring down my scopes, and then I can look at what the video looks like graphically as opposed to just the composite video. So what I can tell by looking at these scopes is this scope is going to show my luminance, I believe, and it's showing me that most of the video is peaking out at well less than 100% and above 0%. So I can apply some of my color correction effects to this clip. I'm going to do fast color corrector. Drag and drop it on the clip. Shows up in my effects panel. Then I can go to the input and output levels and see how this is really low. The highlights here are really low. I can bring those up by dragging this input slider. You can see how it goes up in the scopes. And I could completely blow it out if I wanted to, but I'm just going to leave it so that this green bar peaks at right about 100 here. And then the same thing with the input levels for black, and drag them in until that little line hits 0. Now this vector scope here, this one at the top right, this is something that you can use both when you're looking at skin tones and when you're trying to check your white balance. Now, skin tones are always going to fall along this line, no matter what color, how light or dark the person's skin actually is, because it's going more by the hue angle. So you have a person's skin taking up a large portion of the clip, and use this scope here to tell if your color is on or your color is off. If I go back to the composite video here, you can see the effects that I've made so far just with the input and output levels. Off, on. Just kind of increase the contrast a little bit. And I think by this vector scope, see how it's a little bit bottom and right of center? I'm going to try dragging this hue, balance, and angle slider just a little bit, just so I can drag that little splotch of color back toward the very center, and I just want to see what that looks like. Okay, that's a little bit too orange. Sometimes, depending on the clip, sometimes if you are too far down here, it means that you're too cool in your colors, and you need to warm the footage up a bit by pushing it towards orange, but that doesn't really look like it's the case here. The other thing you can look at is these color channels right here. If I push this clip way over to orange, it's going to make the red channel go way up high and the blue channel way down low. Or if I want to take it the other way to blue, it makes the blue channel way up high. And white balance, typically is when these are all level, but it's not always going to be like that. So it's just kind of a good starting point to look at these scopes. But ultimately, your best judge is just going to be by looking at the footage. Okay, so let's just look at the before and after again. Okay, so now that I have this color correction effect, I can just copy and paste that onto all the clips that have the bear in them. All the clips that are taken with that Canon. You don't always want to just drag and drop like that. You're still going to want to check and make sure that you did the right thing. Because, while I was looking at the bear here, that might have had, the same color correction and it would have looked fine. But then when I turn the camera and look at Joe's face, the lighting actually might be a little bit different and you might want a little bit different color correction. So look at each clip individually when you're doing these corrections. As far as the footage from the Sony NEX is concerned, that mirrorless camera that I shot wide open with that 50mm lens, I shot this all with a flat image profile. So this image profile is going to look different than the Canon color-wise. You're going to want to do your best to match those up. The other thing is I'm going to want to do some sharpening. So we have this effect called the unsharp mask. I know they have this in Premiere, but I believe that the unsharp mask is something that they're going to have in other softwares as well. And I'm just going to put in some defaults that I found helpful. 65, 3 for the radius, and then just leave it at 0 for the threshold. And then look at the before and after. It's really hard to tell the difference there unless you zoom this way in. So I'll zoom to 200%. And I don't know how much of this is actually going to come through with the YouTube compression, but rest assured I can see a difference on my computer. So before I showed that color wheel to make the color corrections, this time I'm going to show you the curves, which is very common. Curves are something that you can find in just about any editing platform. I'm just going to go into the master curves here. And the way these curves work is you have highlights here at the top right, and you have shadows here at the bottom. Everything in the middle is midtones. So if I wanted to, say, drop my highlights, I could take this point at the top right, drop it down, and then you can see, corresponding this vector scope on the, or this luminance scope on the right, you can see how that dropped way down. And we look at the actual footage, you can see it got way darker. Versus when I bring that up. And then the shadows, I can lighten the shadows, actually darken the shadows, or lighten the shadows. And then midtones, I can boost the midtones, drop the midtones. And then an easy way to increase the contrast in a clip is just by giving it this kind of S-curve. And we can look at the before and after. Before, after. And you can play around with that to make sure the color and everything is correct and you have the right amount of contrast, the right amount of sharpness. You can really put in as much time and effort here as you want to. But then once I have that, I'll go through each clip individually. If I have a bunch of similar clips, then I'll just copy and paste. If every clip is different, then I'll just color correct every clip differently. There is one more thing I want to talk about, and that's plugins. I have a plugin by Red Giant software called Magic Bullet Looks. It's a purchasable software, and you can import that into your editing software. And then I can open up this panel here where I can do color corrections to my clips, and they give you all these looks that you can go through and try different things, different presets. I created my own preset, and it's just a real generic thing. I can take the 3-way color corrector wheels here, and I can look at the scope on the left, and I can see that my shadows, I'm going to want to bring them down, so I can do that real intuitively. Right there, looks good. I'm going to drop the highlights a bit, and then I'm going to boost the midtones just like that. Hue and saturation, since I dropped the saturation a little bit when I filmed this, I want to add some of it back in, so I'll boost this to 110%, see what it looks like. Okay. I can turn the effect on and off and see how that makes a difference. Not very noticeable, but I kind of like that. I don't like overdone looking color corrected clips. I added a vignette So this is what a vignette looks like, really strong. Okay, it's that kind of thing. And you'll see this a lot of times on TV where I think it looks way too strong. I like to keep it really unnoticeable, just so that the only way you could even tell it was there is if you apply the clip on and off. And then you can just move that and it just kind of keeps your subject in focus subconsciously. Curves again, I just like to use this right here for the contrast. Warm, cool, I can push everything toward orange or blue. But if you set your white balance in the field right, then you shouldn't have to worry about it. Okay, some of this clip with that magic bullet looks. Before, after, before, after. And just about anything that you can do in this plugin, you can do within Premiere or within Sony Vegas or within whatever color correction software you're using. But it just makes it a little bit more intuitive and easy to use, I think. So that's why I bought it. That's why I use it. You know, once you have everything all lined up, everything is exactly how you want this final clip to look, you have to render your footage. So all those effects that you applied, they won't get fully applied really to the footage. You have to render your footage first. I just hit enter there. That started the rendering process. And this will go really fast or it'll go really slow depending on how many processing intensive effects that you've applied to your clips. If I do a lot of heavy color correction, this is going to take forever. If I have a 15-minute video and I applied the unsharp mask and a whole bunch of looks to my footage, it might take an hour or two even on my computer that has 12 gigabytes of RAM and a 2 gigabyte graphics card. But if you don't really apply that many effects, the color corrections are really quick and easy, not that extreme. It's not going to take too long at all. And then you just got to export your clip. So for Premiere Pro, I'll just file export, media. And when I'm exporting for YouTube, I really like to use the H.264 setting. And since I filmed this in 1080p, I'll go down to the preset for HD 1080p. 29.97. Now, the Canon that I used filmed with this 1080p and 29.97. The Sony filmed in 60 frames per second. But I'm going to export the whole thing as 29. And then I can choose to save this wherever I want. But you can just save it wherever you want to go with whatever file name. And then just hit export. And that's it. Then you can just upload to YouTube.